good? Thank you for stopping by to visit the channel for these projections of the college football season. It is the final week of the regular season. I cannot believe we have gotten this far into the year. It just feels like we just started week one not too long ago. But in any event, we have already gone through 12 weeks so far of the season, and unfortunately it's coming to a close. And with that being said, it is that time of the year where we have the game, we have the Iron Bowl, we have the Civil War. I mean, just rivalries everywhere, clean old-fashioned hate, the whole 9 yards, man. And it is going to be an exciting weekend, as always, during Thanksgiving weekend, so that way we can all get our turkey, get stuffed, check it out, and watch the college football, eat some leftovers. I'm excited. I'm pretty sure you guys are excited too. In any event, if this is your first time visiting this channel and you want to hear a different take of college football from an analytical perspective, if you haven't done so already, please click that subscribe button, click the notification bell, and select all so you don't miss another video. Also, like the video and share the video. It does help this channel grow. And give me your projections of your respective college football game or whatever game that you decided to review here. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the Civil War of Oregon and Oregon State. Out of the 9 categories, Oregon State holds an advantage in 4 of them with 2 pushes, and Oregon having the advantage in 3 of those categories. Surprisingly, in those 3 categories, it's pretty much where the Oregon State offense has somewhat of an advantage with pretty much what they like to do. Oregon State is really good. They want to stay ahead of the chains as far as like standard down offense goes, and they're really adept at running the football as well. But the Duck defense, they really love shooting the gaps and force you to play, down in distance on 3rd and longs. Their stuff rate is 45th in the country, and in defensive line yardage, they are 17th in the country in that metric. So their defensive line is really good at controlling the point at the line of scrimmage, and they really love shooting the gaps with their linebackers as well, making sure that they're trying to get behind the line of scrimmage and stopping those runs at or behind the line of scrimmage to get those negative plays here. If I'm Oregon State here, what I'm thinking is they're going to utilize their pass offense in this case here and try to test that Oregon defensive secondary. Passing downs, the Oregon State offense is actually pretty darn solid. 39th in the country in adjusted passing downs. And you have the Oregon Duck defense, unfortunately, where they are 117th in sack rate. So it should give Oregon State time to scan the field and look down the field and hit some of those explosive plays, just to try to break some of these tendencies. When Oregon has the ball, they have a pretty good advantage over the Oregon State defense. They have the advantage of 5 of the 9 categories. Oregon State, their only advantage is adjusted passing down defense, which they're 54th in the country in that metric. Oregon, they do not like to get involved with a lot of 3rd and long situations. They really like to stay ahead of the chains, as you can tell here how their standard down offense is 10th in the country. Sack rate is 5th, but they don't throw the ball as often. They are primarily a running team. They run the ball 60% of the time. So when you have a rush offense that's 2nd in the country, and then your offensive line yards, which determines the strength of your offensive line, which is probably their best unit offensively. If you're top 5 in both of those metrics, there's really not much else to say about what Oregon likes to do. They like to run the ball. They like to stay ahead of the chains. They don't get involved in a lot of 3rd and long situations. And that's pretty much has been their bread and butter for the season so far. So it's been a formula that has worked for them in the Pac-12. And it's basically a formula that works in any type of league, to be quite honest with you. So the Vegas line at the time of recording has Oregon favored by 3.5. The computer model is right around that line, but it has Oregon covering the spread. It has Oregon favored by 4, but it's also projecting that the game is relatively tight. The model is projecting that both teams will have at least between 10 or 11 possessions, and that's based on average, due to the fact that both teams run the ball primarily. Oregon State, they run the ball 66% of the time, which is 15th in the country as far as run pass ratio. Oregon runs the ball 60% of the time, like I mentioned. So I'm expecting this game, if everything turns out to be, if anything turns out to be how they normally play it, to be really, really short, to be quite honest with you. I don't think the ball is going to go in the air as much as expected. But at the end of the day, I'm saying all of this, but this game is in Corvallis, and weird stuff tends to happen in Corvallis. So I have a couple of friends who are Oregon State fans, so I have seen the weirdness, to be quite honest with you. So I firmly believe it. So we'll see it. Anything can definitely happen, especially in this game. I think Oregon State's very capable of pulling off the upset, to be quite honest with you. All right, so we're on the second game, which is USC and Notre Dame. And to start off, the USC offense is pretty prolific. Fifth in offensive success rate, sixth in offensive EPA when you adjust for opponent as well. They really love running the football with their offensive line, eighth in the country in offensive line yards. Rush offense is also in the top 10 as well. They're a team that really loves to stay ahead of the chains, as you can tell here. Standard down offense, they're sixth in the country, so they're very elite. Anytime that you do see an offense that is in the top 10 in standard downs, that tells you that they really love staying ahead of schedule. And if they're staying ahead of schedule at that point, you can't really get them off the field, to be quite honest with you. So it's going to be tough sledding for Notre Dame to keep this USC offense pretty much keep the offense on their heels, so to speak. If there is a spot that Notre Dame has here that can, be very disruptive, sack rate for Notre Dame, they are 26th in the country in sack rate. USC's offense, they are 62nd in that metric. So as good as Caleb Williams is, he does hold the ball too long a little bit at times. And if the Notre Dame pass rush can get to Caleb Williams, they can definitely throw this USC offense out of line here and completely disjoint them a little bit. So that is going to be the ace. It can't be the ace in the hole for Notre Dame here. But overall, the USC offense over the Notre Dame defense, it is an overwhelming advantage. But this Notre Dame defense, though, they do have a pulse. So it's not like the UCLA defense or lack thereof that USC faced last week. So this Notre Dame defense, even though they don't have the statistical advantage over USC, I think they are going to put up a little bit more of a fight. On the flip side, when Notre Dame has the ball, there is a pretty sizable advantage the Irish has over the USC defense. As crazy as it sounds, USC is really adept at running the football on offense and trying to stay ahead of schedule. But on the flip side, they are just as bad stopping the run. The old adage is, if you can run the ball, you should be able to stop the run. In this case, that's quite the opposite. USC's run defense is pretty abysmal, to be quite honest with you. Even though Notre Dame's rush offense is not particularly as effective, they should be able to have some success running against USC. The issue is Notre Dame's pass offense is solid, not necessarily elite, but okay. But the thing about USC is that they're very opportunistic. Their pass defense is 10th in the country in EPA. So if you are going to throw the ball up against USC, you better be careful putting it against their secondary, because they are very opportunistic and they can turn those into interceptions. So if you're Notre Dame here, you do have a pretty good advantage if you stick to the ground game. If you're not particularly adept at it, still you should be able to try it and have some success against USC's run defense here. So the computer model for this game is projecting a relatively slower pace game between USC and Notre Dame. USC gets a reputation just because, Lincoln Riley coach team that like to go fast. But to be quite honest with you, they are one of the slower paced teams in the country. The majority of their touchdown drives, or scoring drives for that matter, they're about 3 minutes per scoring drive. So they can, sit on the ball quite a bit if you allow them to. Notre Dame is actually, believe it or not, a more quote unquote faster team, just not by much. I think their scoring drives are more along the lines of like, I want to say like 10 to 15 seconds more, to be quite honest with you. So 10 to 15 seconds faster than USC, but not by much. So USC is 72nd in the country in seconds per play. So they don't really, go as fast. So this is not going to be the track meet that we saw between USC and UCLA, their last week or whatever the case is. So it's expecting that both teams will have between 10 to 11 possessions in this game, but it's projecting USC to win, but not particularly to cover the spread here. So it's given a final score roughly 29 to 27. So given how Notre Dame has played over the last few weeks, I'd say this is roughly about what I'm expecting in this game to be here. I expect this game to be slower pace, Notre Dame to get some stops here. I don't particularly expect Notre Dame to light up USC, which I think they do have the capability if they decide to stick with the running game. But in this game here, all bets are off here, to be quite honest with you. USC is playing for a playoff spot. So this game could get a little conservative. But in a game like this, as tight as the spread is, turnovers are definitely going to be what's going to decide this game, to be quite honest with you. Game number 3 is the Iron Bowl between Alabama and Auburn. Last week, I was in Tuscaloosa for the game last week against Austin Peay. I am an Austin Peay alum, so it was an experience to actually see my alma mater go down and play the standard of college football. So I was very impressed in Bryant-Denny Stadium. I haven't been to Tuscaloosa since the 2009 homecoming game. I actually got invited to that game. They were playing in South Carolina, I believe, and Mark Ingram, I think he ran for like 240 yards in that game. It was absolutely crazy. And it was cold. It was very, very cold. Probably the coldest game I think I've ever been in. And that does say a lot. It doesn't really get, too cold in Alabama, to be quite honest with you. But it was definitely cold that night. So it was the coldest game I've ever been a part of. But in any event, had a blast last week. It was really cool seeing Austin Peay actually go down and play Alabama. And I thought our guys gave a good effort, but it's Alabama, so wasn't really expecting a win, but hey, at least they covered. So that's the only thing that I can find solace in. But in any event, though, back to this game. So in Alabama, when they have the ball, they have advantages overall, but the main concern is exactly like the LSU game, to be quite honest with you. The offensive line versus the defensive line. Auburn's rush defense, not particularly good as far as the EPA standpoint goes, but they're more boom or bust. They're going to sell out, or they either sell out, and if they don't get to stop their run at or behind the line of scrimmage, they're going to give up explosive plays on the running game. So you can see the sack rate. They're 16th in the country in sack rate, 54th in the country in stuff rate, and 47th in defensive line yards. So they do have a considerable advantage over the Alabama offensive line. I know a lot of the Alabama fans say that they should run the ball more, but they're 30th in rush offense EPA, but 92nd in stuff rate. So it is really boom or bust. It's feast or famine when Alabama has some success running the football. As far as running it, they're not particularly consistent. So it's going to be hit or miss when it comes down to it. And then when you also look at the pass offense, they have definitely slipped down offensively over the last few weeks. So not the efficient offense that we are looked to seeing here, to be quite honest with you, from Alabama, but they should be able to move the ball effectively against Auburn, but expect Auburn to show some resistance, especially between the defensive line that they have versus Alabama's offensive line. As much flack as Alabama's defense has received, based on what their fans have as far as like the standard defense goes, they still have a considerable advantage against the Auburn offense. Unfortunately, in this case, believe it or not, when you look at Alabama's numbers, when you adjust for opponent, they're actually pretty decent from an EPA standpoint. They don't really give up a ton of explosive plays. They just give up a few chunk plays here and there, just not a lot, to be honest with you. But in any event, the defense is actually a top 5 defense when you adjust for opponent as far as EPA goes, and a top 20 as far as success rate goes too. So at the end of the day, this is an Alabama defense that should have an advantage over an Auburn offense that hasn't really done anything or everything particularly well. They do have a lot of runs stopped at or behind the line of scrimmage, so they are a little bit leaky on the offensive line, so to speak. I even know that they have tried to commit to running it a little bit more in the last couple of weeks. But if you're an Alabama fan, you've kind of seen this story before, where you feel this should be relatively easy, but Auburn is going to have some success based on the numbers in the last few weeks. But this is a matchup that Alabama should win, and should win comfortably if we're looking at this. But this is a rival game, so all bets are off and anything can happen because Auburn is playing for a bowl game. So the computer model for this game is pretty much thinking that this is going to be not a struggle win, but a game where Alabama puts Auburn away, so to speak, but not cover. It has Alabama winning by the score of 31-14. So a 17-point win. The Vegas line is currently at 22 at the time of recording. To be honest with you, I'm almost in tune with what the model is thinking in this case here. I'm not really seeing a blowout here, but when you look at the advanced numbers, it looks like Alabama should win. It should win comfortably. They should be able to dominate on defense, and they should be able to have some success on offense. But if you have watched Alabama over the last few weeks, nothing has really come particularly easy for them because I don't think they make it easy for themselves, to be quite honest with you. So yeah, I'm kind of expecting this to be a game where Alabama wins but not cover. So wouldn't surprise me at all if the halftime score is like a 13-3, something along those lines, and then it ends up being like 31-17 or something along those lines to end the game. So wouldn't be shocked to see Alabama not covering the spread in this case. I think I'd be more surprised if Alabama comes in and just absolutely eviscerates Auburn here, which I believe they should. But based on what we've seen over the last few weeks, I'm pretty much expecting this to be a game where Alabama wins, but they don't look particularly amazing doing it. And the last game we have in this projection video is obviously the game, Ohio State and Michigan. So let's go ahead and start with Ohio State. When they have the ball, there's a lot of pushes against this Michigan defense. Ohio State fans are going to be really surprised when they see that there is not a lot of scarlet and gray here, but this Michigan defense is going to be up to the task against an Ohio State offense here. But the only advantage that they have here is that Ohio State doesn't allow a lot of sacks. They're second in the country in offensive sack rate. Michigan, not really adept at getting to the quarterback, 51st in the country in defensive sack rate. But this is going to be a battle between the offensive and defensive lines. Number 1 offensive line yardage for Ohio State, number 2 in defensive line yards for Michigan. So this is going to be a really physical challenge that Ohio State's going to have here against the Michigan defense. So this is definitely going to be one where you need to pack your lunch for this one. When Michigan has the ball, they're going to go up against quite possibly the best defense they will have faced all year. And Ohio State is number 1 in defensive EPA, and they have been number 1 for quite a while, to be quite honest with you. This Ohio State defense is not the defense that Michigan saw last year. They have improved significantly. Just what happens when you make a change in defensive coordinator and they just unlock the capabilities that Ohio State has had for the longest time, so to speak. They've recruited well on this side of the ball, but they just haven't had competent coordinators, so to speak. But they definitely got one now in Jim Knowles, and he's definitely done a heck of a job for sure. If there is a battle that Ohio State is going to lose, it's going to be not getting to the quarterback. Michigan, they don't really allow a lot of sacks. They're 23rd in the country in offensive sack rate, but part of that is because they run the ball more often than not, so to speak. So they are primarily a running team, so they don't really have a ton of dropbacks, so to speak, and they only throw out of opportunity. So, and as you can see here, when they have to pass, they're 91st in the country in pass offense. Ohio State's pass defense is number 1. So if they do have to pass out of necessity, I don't think they're going to have a lot of success against an Ohio State secondary here, especially since we're worried about the health of Blake Corum here. So this could be an issue for Michigan if they're not able to run the ball as effectively as they have been throughout the year. This could be a tougher challenge than expected. So looking at their rushing numbers, they're 4th in the country in rush offense EPA, but as I said earlier, these stats really have Blake Corum affected in here. So this is all baked in with him being able to run the football as effectively as he did. And if he can't go, this is obviously going to change the dynamic of the game. So very curious to see if he can go and how effective, can he be? That's going to be in question. So the computer model in this game has Ohio State winning about a score of 26-25 when you round up. Now, computer models don't factor in injuries or weather, or anything like that. It would be a fun off-season project to see if I can factor in injuries to certain players relative to drive efficiency. But in any event, this is what we currently have right now. So basically, the model is projecting that both teams will have about 11 possessions each. Michigan wants to slow the tempo down. Ohio State wants to speed the game up. So it is a contrast in styles, so to speak here. So Michigan wants to control the line of scrimmage, wants to keep CJ Stroud in that offense on the sideline. But I think it's going to be a lot tougher for Michigan due to the fact that if Blake Corum and the bevy of injuries that they have, as far as their skill players go, that could be an issue for them, especially going up against an Ohio State defense that has improved quite a bit from year to year. To be quite honest with you, if I was picking a winner in this game, I'd honestly pick Ohio State to win this game. As far as like a score goes, I don't know if Ohio State would particularly cover the spread, only because Michigan has a lot of pride in this game. But I do believe Ohio State, to kind of use the term of God of War Ragnarok, since I'm playing that game quite a bit, they want a blood payment from Michigan based on what Michigan did to them last year. So I think they're going to get their blood payment. I don't know if they're going to blow Michigan out. I'm not predicting a blowout in this game here, but I do predict that Ohio State, if I am calling in this game, I think Ohio State's going to win this one, to be honest with you. Based on the fact that Michigan's injuries, I don't know if they can actually pass out of necessity and be able to control the game through the air, as opposed to not being able to control the game on the ground. So if I were picking, I think I'd pick Ohio State winning this game for sure. So, but in any event, that will be all for my projections. And I actually, had a prediction in this game, which is actually the end of it. So in any event, that's it. And let me know what your thoughts are in all of the 4 games in the comment section below. Give me your score predictions and tell me why you think your respective team is going to win. Hope you enjoyed this projection video. Please give the video a like, and if you love college football as much as I do, please hit that subscribe button if you want to stay updated with the latest previews and the occasional highlights. Thank you for watching, and thank you for visiting the channel.